get this one nagging fear when it comes to riding my motorcycle. It's something that I've worked really hard to try and shake, but so far, I'm not having a whole lot of luck. Let me explain. Five minutes before I hit record on my camera, I almost hit a deer. It jumped out in front of me, did that whole deer in the headlights thing. I missed it by about 3 feet. Scared the living hell out of me. Thankfully, my training and a whole lot of practice kicked in, and I was able to save my bike, save the deer, and save myself. But it sparked this doom loop that I have going in my brain. This one lingering fear I have about riding. And it's not so much about riding, it's about what happens after a crash. Not too long ago, I made a video about addressing your fears and anxieties when it comes to motorcycling. And I talked about the idea of cataloging your fears, sort of taking an inventory of what you're afraid of, and really coming to understand what it actually is that you're afraid of. Are you afraid of breaking down in the middle of nowhere, or are you more afraid of feeling helpless if that happens? Stuff like that. The idea is to go into situations like that prepared. Know what you're going to do if something happens, and have a plan. That way, you won't stress over it as much. But this one lingering fear that I have is something that I'm not sure you can prepare for. What happens after a crash? I don't mean dealing with injuries or the financial impact of having to repair your motorcycle or anything like that. What I mean is, after a crash, will I have the courage, the guts to get back on a motorcycle? Will I find some way to shake it off and get back on the bike and do this thing that I've come to absolutely love? Or will that be the end of it? Will I be too afraid to ever get back on a motorcycle again? This is a constant fear that I live with. It's something that I think about almost every time I get out on the road. I'm pretty good about putting my day-to-day problems behind me when I'm out on my bike. I'm also pretty good about not stressing over the what ifs. What if I break down? What if I drop my bike? That kind of thing. But it's this long-term what if that I'm just having trouble shaking. I don't want to get to the point in my life where I say, I'm just too afraid to get back on that thing. The other day I was out riding with some friends. My motorcycle, my brand new Triumph Scrambler, fell over in a parking lot. Doesn't matter how it happened, but it happened. And I stood there looking at my bike on its side. It was laying there kind of helpless, and I was standing there kind of helpless. But I looked down and I said, you know what? It's just a bike. If it's broken, it'll get fixed. Luckily, the damage was incredibly minor. One thing that did break was the tip of my brake lever. It's meant to do that, and it functioned as it should. So I took the tip, put it in my pocket, brought it home, and I made a necklace out of it. I know that sounds silly, but hear me out. I wear that necklace now as sort of a reminder. It reminds me that, you know what, if you get home after a long day's ride with good friends, and the worst thing that happened that day was a broken brake lever, that's a pretty damn good day. The tippy bike incident just kind of solidified in my head that I'm in a good place when it comes to not stressing over the little things. But it really amplified just how much I do worry about what happens when the worst happens. Seeing my bike on its side put an image in my head of me laying under that bike, helpless, stuck. A broken leg, a broken arm, who knows? Nothing that would be insurmountable, really, but enough that would shake me to my core. After a thing like that happens, would I really dust myself off, get up, get back on that bike, and keep riding after I healed, or if I wasn't hurt, or whatever? The answer to that question is complicated at best. It's complicated because I have no idea. I haven't been in that situation, so I have no experience. I've never even crashed a car. And that raises a whole different point. When I was 16 and a half, I got my driver's license. The fear of crashing that car wasn't a fear of crashing the car per se. It was a fear of, if I crash this car, am I ever going to drive again? Am I going to have the courage to get behind the wheel of another car? Or am I just doomed to a life of walking everywhere? Maybe this all sounds a little extreme to you, but we've all got our fears. No matter how well you prepare for things, you're always going to have some fear. And maybe that's what's bothering me the most about this, is it's a recognition that I'm not fearless. I'm not some fearless tough guy that just lets every single thing in life roll off his back. I'm human. And I have fears. And this is one fear that I'm having a whole lot of trouble letting go. So what's the answer here? The reality is that the answer might be, let it go and deal with it if and when it happens. This goes against the whole idea that I put forth in the previous video about being prepared and cataloging your fears. I mean, I've certainly cataloged this fear. I've identified it. I know it well. As far as preparing for it, I'm not sure that I can. The best I can do is say, if that day ever comes, you've built up enough strength and confidence as a rider to make the right decision. And that decision will probably be, dust yourself off, get back on the road, because that's where you belong. So to that end, I guess I probably already made the decision, and maybe that's what I need to realize. If and when that day happens, you don't have to sit down and decide whether or not you're going to get back on the bike. You've already decided. So in the end, I guess I am prepared. More than I thought I was before I made this video, actually. And maybe hearing me work through this in real time helps some of you out there who are sort of struggling with the same sort of fear as I am. If you've been in a wreck and you've either gotten back on your bike and continued riding, or just quit motorcycling altogether, or if this is just a fear that you share with me, I'd love to hear your story. Drop a note in the comments and let me know how you deal with this stuff. As a motorcycling community, we need to be here for each other. So anything you can offer is going to be valuable to someone, I promise. And with that, it's time to get ready to go moto camping this weekend. I've got my necklace, I've got my motorcycle, slightly scratched. I've got everything I need. And maybe now that I've worked through this a bit in this video, maybe I'll spend less time thinking about the what ifs and more time thinking about just how amazing it is to hit the road with some camping gear, going into the woods, making a campfire, and planning the next adventure. Thanks for listening. I really do appreciate it.